What was happening in Hayden Panettiere's life before she died? What did her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Brian Hickerson, who was reportedly present at the scene, say just months earlier? His brother just shared his version of the day too. We want to analyze the actress's last sightings, movements, statements before her death as investigators piece together what happened. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. I want to follow up on the investigation, specifically the timeline, the sequence of events leading up to Hayden Panettiere's untimely death, because we have some additional details that we're going to talk about. And I want to recall what happened here, okay? The 36-year-old actress was found unresponsive and in cardiac arrest on Sunday, August 16th. This was at an apartment where she was temporarily staying, seemingly this Airbnb out in Greenville, South Carolina. According to the Greenville County Coroner's Office, at approximately 1:51 p.m., a 911 call was received reporting a cardiac arrest at 701 Easley Bridge Road in Greenville. First responders and EMS, emergency medical services, they arrived on scene. They located a female in cardiac arrest. EMS personnel initiated advanced cardiac life support. However, these resuscitation efforts were unsuccessful, and the individual was pronounced deceased at 2:32 p.m. And here is actually a portion of that dispatch audio.
Everyone incident on for cardiac arrest, Justin Millwall, 701 Easley Bridge Road, apartment 1209, 701 Easley Bridge Road, apartment 1209. Everyone incident for cardiac arrest, Justin Millwall, 701 Easley Bridge Road, apartment 1209, 701 Easley Bridge Road, apartment 1209. Mr. 1, medic 29 responding.
In place of medic 29, Easley Bridge Road, overdose, CPR is in progress.
You hear the term overdose there, right? Now, to be clear, we don't know exactly what happened yet. It's been reported that while an autopsy found no signs of trauma contributing to Hayden's death, her official cause and manner of death have not been officially determined because authorities, the officials, are awaiting the toxicology findings, which could take some time. Now, we have also learned that reportedly the Heroes actress on-again, off-again boyfriend, Brian Hickerson, and his brother, Zach, were at the scene and placed the 911 phone call. CNN is reporting that the police report indicates that an officer interviewed the brothers, with the police report saying, quote, "I spoke with Zach Hickerson first. He advised this was his brother's girlfriend." Now, that's significant because of the status of the relationship. We'll talk about it. But by the way, this report that is circulating online also suggests that the officer spoke with Brian too, but much of the contents of that conversation or conversations are redacted. They're blacked out. Now, something else I want to mention about this report, it indicates that the officers observed Zach to be, quote, very emotional while EMS were working on Hayden. Brian did not become emotional until EMS declared her officially deceased. Take that for what you will. People respond differently in different situations, but it was seemingly noted in the report. Now, CNN is also reporting that Brian Hickerson allegedly showed officers a bag of medications at this apartment. This is per the report too. But now, and this is significant, this is new, Zach has apparently spoken to TMZ and provided more details about what allegedly happened. Because according to TMZ, Zach claims that his brother, Brian, gave Hayden Panettiere Narcan after they found her unconscious that day. Now, timeline for a second, right? It has also been reported that Brian Hickerson and Hayden traveled together the day before she died. Now, I'm going to get into their tumultuous history spanning almost 10 years in a bit, but to give you a timeline, okay, this is significant because according to E! News, the two traveled from LA to South Carolina on August 15th. Zach reportedly told TMZ that he didn't hear from them, that he went to church that morning, was texting Brian, that they had plans to all grab lunch and play indoor golf, but then he didn't hear from them. According to him, he goes to that Greenville Airbnb, again that day on the 16th, knocks on the door. Brian, according to him, wakes up from a nap, and this is when they find Hayden unconscious. And Brian allegedly gives her Narcan. This is used to treat an opioid overdose. This is a quote from Zach to TMZ. I knocked loudly, which apparently woke Brian up from a nap they were both taking on the pull-out couch bed in the living room. When we went in and tried to wake Hayden up for lunch, we realized she was unconscious. I immediately called 911, and Brian gave her Narcan. We then jointly performed CPR while 911 was on speaker until fire and EMS arrived. At that point, we watched as they tried every measure possible to save her life. Now again, this is his apparent version. Zach says, there are a lot of assumptions, speculations, and accusations currently swirling. The truth will come out as the authorities complete and release additional details from the investigation. And that is important because the people who loved and adored Hayden deserve the truth. I am beyond heartbroken and devastated by this tragic and traumatic loss. Hayden was one of my dearest and closest friends that I loved and cared about for the last 8 years. Out of respect for her loved ones, the speculation and sensationalism of her death needs to end until the facts can be released from the investigation. All right, I know this is a 180, but I gotta say it. Look, if you're a business owner out there, running a business is tough enough. Why make it harder doing things manually or relying on dozens of apps that don't talk to each other, right? That's where our sponsor, Odoo, comes in. So Odoo is an all-in-one business management platform with a full suite of integrated apps that seamlessly connect all your operations, from sales and accounting to manufacturing, even shipping. Odoo can automatically generate professional, sleek-looking sales orders, invoices, vendor bills, and it can automatically assign sales teams and send email updates throughout each sales stage, and even use AI to pull reports that will help with your decision making. For manufacturing, their apps can sync inventory with real-time production and purchase updates so you never run out of stock. And when it comes time for accounting, that's also fully automated. Odoo can create invoices and track expenses and even summarize data with AI to save you hundreds of hours. You know what the best part is? You can choose your apps and even build custom workflows so it's all fully tailored to your business's needs. Take your business to the next level by consulting with an Odoo expert today for free at odoo.com/sidebar. TMZ has also reported that law enforcement sources told them that authorities are investigating whether a crime has been committed, largely because Hayden's death was so unexpected. Law enforcement is investigating at the same time as the coroner. And then you couple that with reporting by multiple outlets like Fox, CNN, New York Times, the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the feds, have joined the investigation, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on. Back to the timeline, okay? One of the last times that we saw Hayden Panettiere publicly was apparently at LaGuardia Airport. This was back in May. It was also reported by TMZ. And she was asked on her way into the airport with a friend about something else that happened this year. You know what else happened this year? Her memoir came out. This Is Me, A Reckoning. Now, at the airport, she sort of dodged questions. She smiled briefly. She was asked about her description in the book of trying shrooms for the first time during filming of Scream 4. And then she was also asked about a yacht incident. That's because that same month, in May, she went on the On Purpose with Jay Shetty podcast, where she claims that one night she was out, she was having fun, she went on a boat with some friends, and this is when she said she was, quote, led by somebody that I had grown to trust and see as a protector and somebody who had my back, that she was led down the stairs into a, quote, very small room. She physically put me in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous. There was no jumping off and swimming away, and there was nobody who was going to be empathetic to my situation. I realized that this was nothing new to them. So this is what she was asked at the airport just a few months before she died. Now, Hayden has been quite open about the struggles, the turmoil, the drama of her life. That included suffering from postpartum depression, from substance abuse issues. This was all after the birth of her daughter Kaya in 2014. She shared her daughter with former fiancé and boxer Vladimir Klitschko. And it seems in light of what she had been going through, that back in 2018, she sent Kaya to live with Vladimir Klitschko in Ukraine, saying it was, quote, the hardest thing I have ever had to do. Adding, quote, but I wanted to be a good mom to her, and sometimes that means letting them go. And it would only be a few years later that there was another horrific tragedy in her life, 2023. This is when her brother, Jansen, died at only 28 years of age from an enlarged heart with aortic valve complications. Hayden told Jay Shetty in that podcast, "There was nothing in my life that feels like losing my other half. We were so close, and being the older sibling, who it's your job to protect them and keep them safe, and not being able to, heartbreaking doesn't even begin to cover it." So you're just getting a sense of what she had gone through in recent years as we try to examine the circumstances surrounding her death. And a lot of the conversation now and a lot of the focus of her timeline is also regarding her controversial relationship with the person I mentioned before, Brian Hickerson, specifically domestic violence, which she recounted in her memoir, saying, quote, "What I never told them was that the abuse I'd endured didn't feel as bad as the thought of being alone. One night he busts up my face so badly, I don't leave the house for weeks." And this is when she just refers to a Brian. "You never forget the first time someone slaps you, nor do you forget the last." 2019. Hickerson is charged out in California with a felony count of injuring a spouse, cohabitant, fiance's, boyfriend, girlfriend, or child's parent. 2021, as part of a plea arrangement, Hickerson is convicted of 2 felony counts of injuring a spouse, cohabitant, fiance's, boyfriend, girlfriend, or child's parent in connection with the incidents back in 2019. This is according to the Superior Court of Los Angeles County Clerk's Office. And he would be sentenced to 4 years of formal probation. This is according to the Clerk's Office. Back in August of 2022, Hickerson was sentenced again to several years of probation for violating his probation and was required to complete a year-long domestic violence treatment program, attend Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and complete dozens of anger management sessions. This is all according to court records. He also apparently tried to get the court to reduce his felony convictions to just misdemeanors. Wasn't successful. Apparently even tried to do so as recently as August 13th. This is according to court records, but again, wasn't successful. The Hollywood Reporter spoke with a Mia Terrazas, who claims to have been Hayden Panettiere's neighbor in West Hollywood, and says she called 911 at least a half a dozen times to report disturbances, and says she absolutely saw signs of domestic violence, telling the outlet, quote, "I saw her leaving on a gurney. Brian was right next to her, and I asked her if she was okay, and it looked to me that she had suffered some type of trauma that looked to be battering. It was clear she was terrified." Page 6 has reported that a flyer with Brian Hickerson was posted by Hayden's Buildings Homeowners Association out in West Hollywood back in August of 2025, so a year ago, urging Hayden's neighbors to call the police if they saw Hickerson, writing that he has, quote, "been seen trespassing the common areas and hallways. Please not grant him access into the building." And then this happened. Timeline, right? May 2026, so we're talking about the time when the memoir is released. Months before Hayden's death, Brian Hickerson himself sits down for an interview with TMZ's Charlie Neff. He said, among other things, that the memoir speaks for itself, that he understands if people are pissed off at him because he admits he got arrested for abusing Hayden, recounted how, at one time he had a lot to drink, how he got arrested, he got physical with her, that he had opportunities to apologize. He even said, quote, "We didn't have a very good past, did we?" Even recalled a story where he claimed he had a phone in his hand and said to Hayden, "I'll give you 10 seconds to run before I throw it at you." He said, again, during the time of this interview, that at the time their relationship was one of mutual respect, that he always holds a special place in his heart for her, still thinks about marrying her, although he said she probably doesn't feel the same way, that he has regrets, that he's been working on himself, that he's been working with actor Shia LaBeouf in an AA group. Actually said the actor saved his life. But at the same time, said about the abuse, quote, "People do this all the time. You think I'm the only one that did that? No." So it is interesting to hear that in May and then think about what happened between them and then her death. Because the New York Times is reporting that it was only a few months ago that Hayden Panettiere have reportedly hired security to keep Brian Hickerson away. Now, I have to be clear about something, okay? No one has been accused of a crime here. No one has been charged with a crime here in any way, despite what you see online, despite the speculation and rumors and innuendos or whatever it is, or insinuations. To be clear, there is no one who has been accused of committing a crime in connection with Hayden Panettiere's death. Now, the other day, I had a chance to speak with Matt Irvine, retired detective, and I spoke to him about what we should be expecting here, about some aspects of this investigation, what we should be looking out for, and why the DEA is involved. Take a look. Why bring the DEA on board?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because the DEA typically does not get involved in cases that appear to be suspected overdoses, even if there is possibly some suspicion of foul play. I would expect that the reason the DEA is involved is they believe that the substances that may have contributed to Hayden Panettiere's death may be connected to a person or organization that is already the subject of their investigation. Well, the DEA has massive resources. They have tremendous forensic capacity, and this is a case certainly where it appears that they are already looking at communications, looking at devices. The DEA, if they've already got a person or organization under investigation, has a lot of intelligence on that target that they can leverage to support this investigation. I don't know what the law is in South Carolina in terms of being able to charge somebody with homicide for causing the death of another person through the provision of illicit substances, but that is certainly a possibility, and the Matthew Perry case would be the most famous example.
When I said authorities are investigating if a crime was committed, if there was some sense of illegality, particularly because her death was so sudden, what are they looking for? Who are they interviewing? How does it work in terms of trying to see if a crime was committed?
Well, there's a couple of ways that a crime could be involved here. I mean, it is certainly not immaterial that she died in the company of Brian Hickerson, who has been convicted of felony abuse against her. When women die, when they are murdered, it is very often by intimate partners. So absolutely, that possibility needs to be part of any state investigation. Beyond any possible culpability on Mr. Hickerson's part, there is the question of, again, if this is a case where she died because she was provided with some kind of illicit substance, where do those substances come from? And is it possible to hold criminally accountable the person or persons that provided her with those substances? So there's really kind of two fronts in terms of looking at criminality: the possible involvement of the intimate partner or other persons that were actually present at the time that she potentially overdosed, and then kind of one step out, where do those substances come from, and can the person or organization that provided those substances be held criminally liable?
But why do authorities initially say no trauma, no suspicious circumstances, no evidence of foul play? What would lead them to say that, and how do you reconcile that with the new reporting that they're investigating to make sure a crime wasn't committed?
Well, both things are possible. When they say no evidence of foul play, no trauma, that simply suggests that there was no indication that she was beaten, stabbed, shot, or somehow violently killed. That does not mean that her death, whether it be an accidental overdose or somebody intentionally providing her with enough drugs to kill her, is not a separate crime. So the initial scene did not appear, apparently, to show a violent death. That doesn't mean that the death is not potentially a homicide.
Just to be clear, again, I'm going to say this again. No one has been charged with a crime. No one has been accused of committing a crime. No one has been accused of committing a crime in connection with Hayden's death. However, generally speaking, how would you know whether somebody purposely made someone overdose or tricked them or spike something? Or, I mean, what would be some potential evidence there?
Again, they're looking closely at communications, and that may show some plan, either a plan on her part potentially to take substance A when the toxicology ultimately shows that she died from an ingestion of substance B. That could suggest that somebody gave her something that she didn't intend to take, that she didn't have the tolerance for, that was much more potentially lethal than whatever it was she intended to ingest. If that was done intentionally, that could be a crime. It's also possible, again, that the persons with her had no knowledge that she was ingesting something that could potentially be fatal, but the person or organization that provided those substances knew or should have known that she was being provided with something that could kill her. And again, if you're obtaining drugs, particularly in this day and age, and particularly if you're a celebrity, you're not driving down to some sketchy corner. You're doing it probably through electronic communications.
Let me ask you this. So it all comes down to the toxicology test, the toxicology report, right? I mean, like what does that testing entail? How long does something like that take, and how will we find out the results of that?
I imagine, again, I don't know the practices in South Carolina, but I would imagine that once the toxicology is done, that report should be publicly available, just like autopsy reports are generally publicly available. The exception would be if there is an ongoing criminal investigation and there's a reason to keep those findings secret, either because they don't want to tip off the targets of the investigation or because they intend to present the findings to a grand jury and don't want to taint that process. If either of those things are true, it could be a while before we find out in order to protect the integrity of an investigation.
And generally speaking, does it take a while for those tests to come back? Does it take a while for them to fully do a complete evaluation of what was in her system?
It's typically a matter of weeks. Again, they can rush things, and the process itself doesn't take too terribly long. It's just a question of kind of what their procedure is in terms of bumping the line, to be crude about it, in a high-profile case.
Okay, we'll keep a careful eye on what happens next here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, My News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.